بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه المنتجبين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The spirituality entailed in the month of Ramadan, that is the topic that we will be talking on for the next 20 minutes. The word spiritual comes from the word spirit. Now when we look at the word spirit within the Quran, it is the word ruh. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses about the ruh in several places, that the ruh is from the command of God, and whatever you have been given of it, the knowledge is very little. He says to the angels, and when I breathe into him of my ruh, fall flat on your faces. He says about Isa, that about Maryam, that we breathed into her of our ruh. And he says about Isa, he was our word, kalimatun minna, and he was from the ruh, the spirit. And then he says to Isa as well, that I assisted you with the Ruh al-Quds. So when we look at these verses of the Quran, we find that Ruh is something which is quite lofty. We describe it with this word, ineffable. We can't understand it. Spirituality, therefore, would mean the finer level of existence that is within us to actualize that, or to move to a pedestal in our own existence where we become godly or we become God-like. So spirituality in essence is actually the process of emergence of divinity through a human being. What does that mean? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala awaits within us to become revealed and to be disclosed. We can give an example. Within a conceived ovum, there is a little child awaiting to emerge. Within a little child, there is a fully grown adult waiting to emerge. It's not going to come from anywhere else. It is going to be that fetus that grows into a baby, and the baby that will grow into an adult. Within an adult, there is a godly person waiting to emerge. It will not come from anywhere else. It is within the adult itself. And imagine, before we go forward, the lofty rank of this spirit, that as soon as Allah breathes into Adam of his spirit, the angels fall upon their faces. This is how lofty this rank is. But now, before we go anywhere else, how does the child become an adult? The child physically develops, doesn't it? By removing all impediments from the child and giving the child the nutrition that the child needs, the child becomes an adult. The whole process of an adult emerging from a child is a process of removing barriers and giving the body the nutrition that it requires. So there are two things going on simultaneously. One is removal of obstacles, and the other one is supply of growth before the inbuilt potential adult can emerge through a child. Now a child becomes an intelligent person. How does the child evolve into a fully grown intelligent person? By one, having the attitude of removing ignorance, and two, the absorption of knowledge. Again, we see the process of removal of obstacles, which is ignorance, and supply of the growth, means of growth, which is knowledge and learning. Therefore, the becoming of godly person or spirituality is no different in this process. It requires removal of impediments and supply of those factors that allow for growth. Now, if that brief prelude is understood, what are we after in the month of Ramadan in terms of spirituality? We are after the utmost goal and purpose of life. What is the utmost purpose and goal of life? The utmost purpose and goal of life, if we look at it very carefully, very, very carefully, appears to be nothing other than us ourselves. It appears to be nothing other than that. If you were to ask a student studying inside the university, what is the utmost aim that you want to arrive at? They will naively say, I want to be an engineer. I want to be a physician. When we say to them, analyze this further, is an engineer something other than you? Is a physician something other than you? Upon analysis, what they will say is, yes, you are right. By the want of becoming a physician means I will grow into a physician. So my goal is me, myself, but at a very advanced level. Same is the case in spirituality. What goal are we after? The goal is us ourselves. There is nothing else to be found beyond ourselves, and this is the hallmark of spirituality. Why? Let us explain. Today, I want to earn excessive amounts of money, let us say. Why? Because I need to have certain possessions. Now, if I were to analyze this, it only means because I like possessions and hence I want excessive amounts of money. If I were to change within myself, let us say, the drive for getting excessive amount of money were to be removed, then in that case I no longer want excessive amounts of money, I no longer want possession. What does that show? That there was no value in possession, there was no value in excessive amount of money. The only value was my specifying that as a goal for myself. In that way, I only wanted me, myself. Now, if I were to say, I want to be the most learned person on the face of this earth, if we were to analyze that, it would again mean me wanting myself. So the spirituality signifies only one thing, that the human being comes to the completion of his own self. There is nothing else to yearn beyond the self. It can't be, it's not a possibility. But that process in Islam and in every spirituality is structured in specifying a goal. I want to reach somewhere. The place I want to reach is me, myself. But because I can't see it in myself, we specify it as other than myself. So I want to reach that lofty pedestal of godliness. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes the focal and the goal. Now what is Allah, I ask myself? Knowledge without ignorance. So I would want knowledge without ignorance. Life without death. So I would want life without death. Unending treasure in which there is no poverty, then that is what I want. Unending strength and ability without any weakness, and that is exactly what I want. And when we analyze this, these are the motivations through which we exist on the face of this earth. So now if this is understood, that spirituality is the emergence of a complete individual from this person, and that complete individual is the goal in itself, and the focal of that goal is what we term as God and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we can begin on the process of spirituality, what it means to remove obstacles at this stage, and what it means to supply ourselves with the factors that add growth to us. and how Ramadan assists us. The first thing Ramadan does is, it breaks habits. We can't consume. We can't consort. What happens with us is, through a habitual lifestyle, we become very robotic. When we become robotic, we cease to exist within the present. When we cease to exist within the present, according to the spiritual masters, we are not awake. If we are in a slumber, there is no means towards growth. We've given these examples on numerous occasions, that sometimes we travel from Birmingham to London. When we reach London, we ask ourselves, how was the route from Birmingham to London? Now, if it's an ordinary day, and no extraordinary events occurring on the motorway, I personally don't remember the journey at all. It was performed in a very robotic manner. Unless, of course, somebody was irritating me. Then I would remember the rage and the color of the car and the profanities that come out of my mouth. But if there was nobody on the road, if there weren't any lightning or thunderstorms, I wouldn't remember anything. It's a robotic journey. Let us ask ourselves, in the last 1 week, how many meals have we had and what foods did we consume? But I don't remember what I ate yesterday. But you ask somebody in another part of the earth who are not positioned as well as we are, they will remember their meals for the last month. But with me and you, we are robotically leading this life. It is as if we are not here. And therefore there is no process of growth. So the first thing the month of Ramadan does is, it cuts away habits. By cutting away the habit of eating and drinking, it forces us to come into the present, awaken. You are here. I'm feeling hunger. There's still 20 hours to go. It wasn't deliberate, salawat. I've been warned so many times not to say that. And when you warn somebody, inevitably the divine inspires them to say it. And I'm the mouthpiece of the divine. You should know that. So the first thing that happens is that we are pushed and brought into the present. Now, minimizing distractions. That is the first thing in spirituality. The progression of a young man towards an intellectual person is through the want of removal of ignorance and learning. Yes? With a spiritual person, the first thing that happens is removal of distractions. What are removal of distractions in the month of Ramadan? Well, we do know that the Prophet said that the real fast is abstention of the inner person, not the outer person. The outer person stops eating and drinking and stops consorting with women. But the inner person may be totally distracted nonetheless. So the Prophet said that the inner person has to now abstain from what they are habituated to. They are habituated, the first thing the Prophet said, listening to things which are not in keeping with the dignity of the person, to cut away that input which is distracting. They are habituated to seeing things which are not consistent. Stop seeing those things. They say things which are inconsistent with the nature of fast. Stop saying those things. So the Prophet recommended instead that the spiritual person practices seclusion. What seclusion does is, it prevents inner distractions. A person does not speak too much, does not engage with the community too much. And on the other hand, if a person has to engage, then the Prophet has said, practice inner seclusion. The inner seclusion is therefore to constantly be involved in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the person performs dhikr of Allah from within themselves, Allah, 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 that has a therapeutic effect of removing the ill effects of distraction. That is the first thing, removal of distractions. Do not become angry. If you are angry, do not utter a word. Step back. Take a deep breath. Relax. Do not make decisions in haste. You see, all of these things are pointing towards creation of that present and presence. Now, what about the supply of the growth material in the month of Ramadan? We know about the du'as, we know about recitation of the Quran, we know about namaz. But what the Prophet has said is something quite different. The dua that the Prophet talked about was a very different dua to our ceremonial recitation of the dua. The dua that the Prophet spoke of was the calling from within to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the real God. That, he said, is the dua. The Prophet was asked, how should we supplicate to Allah? Should we shout it and supplicate to Allah, or should we make silent prayers? The Prophet said, Allah says, Inni qareeb, I am near. You don't shout. The du'as are made silently. The silent dua will ignite the inner being into the recognition of God, and not robotically, not ceremonially. This dua in Ramadan is a prominent feature that gives growth. The Prophet has said that worship that is performed consistently and is little is dearer to me than that worship performed excessively and there is no consistency in there. There is a reason why the Prophet said this, because he is after quality, not quantity. So now the dua. The Prophet teaches us, and the Imams teach us, that du'as is a free hand for the individual. The whole purpose in spirituality is to arrive at that lofty pedestal, recognition of God and arrival at the fullness of our potential. So in one instance, the person who is supplicating will have to throw away all forms of formalities. Yes? Throw away all forms of formalities with Allah. And say to Allah, oh Lord, you are my Lord. As we speak to our mothers, don't we? When we speak to our mothers, there's no formality because of the proximity of love. There are no inhibitions. Speak to Allah, who is not a formal God, but an intimate God. Speak to Allah in that way, and that is supply of the growth process from within. On the other hand, observe the beauty of what Allah has created and call Him, acknowledging that beauty. Then be mindful of our own sins. And in repentance call Allah, because that humbles the heart. Then as a friend talk with Allah and share with Allah. Then talk with Allah as a fatherly parent. Then talk with Allah in desire and love. But explore all these aspects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala silently from within. My time is finishing. Alaykum salam. 2 more things. Namaz, don't pray excessive namazes. Pray few namaz, but make them full of quality. Yes? Quran, don't read excessive Quran. Read a little bit of Quran, but read it with contemplation. The most significant spiritual attitude is to let go of any conception and say to Allah, oh Allah, you lead me to that which is the truth. Finally, and I'm finishing here, when we are hungry, remember the other is hungry as well. When we are thirsty, remember the other is thirsty as well. to excessively think of the other in the month of Ramadan. Finally, I'll stop here. It's an opportunity for a spiritual man to let it all go. As the fourth Imam says, "Oh Allah, allow me that if a person swears at me, that I, instead of just pardoning them, I pray for them. If somebody steals from me, allow me to give to them. If somebody severs relations with me, allow me to mend relations with them. If somebody disappoints me in my hour of need, allow me to be there in their hour of need. And yet let me not think that I am favoring them, but humble me by thinking that you are giving me an opportunity that is not deserved by me." He says finally, "O Lord, allow not the tongues to praise me, but that you humble me 10 times more in my own soul, so that their praise does not affect me adversely and fills me with conceit." I'll stop there. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali tayyibin at-tahirin.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So we will continue with this session with a short question and answer session. We've got about 12 or 15 minutes. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask them out loud. There are 2 roaming mics, one in the ladies, one in the gents. If you want to write them down and pass them along, that's absolutely fine as well. Please can we keep to the topic? So we're talking about the spirituality and how to get closer, how to unveil and unlock ourselves during the month of Ramadan. So if we can keep to those topics, any questions around that, please feel free to ask. I suppose if you can put your hand up so then the mic can come to you, both either in the ladies or the gents. Open it up to anybody at this time. Yes, one in the gents first.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your talk. My question is that outside the month of Ramadan, we try not to lie and do ghiba and, look at things that we shouldn't be looking, etc. And if these are the same things we should be doing when fasting, what is the difference then? Why is it, emphasized? We don't do those things, and we try not to do those things anyway.
If a person is already abstaining, if the inner person is already abstaining, from inner distractions to the level of not looking at things that are unbefitting, saying things unbefitting, listening to things unbefitting and wasteful pursuits, then they need to arrive at a different pedestal of spirituality, and that is to not to be distracted inwardly from Allah, even from their own thoughts. You see how? The Prophet explained, the Imams also demonstrated, that my love for my child, when it prevails upon my heart, it is a means of distraction from Allah. So then that is the next pedestal to which the individual has to arrive. But there is something more intimate than that. If I am adamant to promote my version of God and Islam, then that is the biggest obstacle at that level. To let go even of that level. If in my inner being, at the core of it, I am striving to arrive at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this my want to arrive at God is the biggest veil from God, to come to a level of becoming absolved from that inner desire and want and become oblivious to it. And that's a much finer level. Yes? So if you've already surpassed those obstacles of inner distractions, then we go on to the intimate psychological and spiritual distractions and work at them. Yeah?
Any from the ladies?
evening. I wonder if I could ask a question. I'm an invited guest here this evening. I'm not a Muslim, but I've really appreciated listening to you. I do teach a lot of Muslim children in my school, and obviously some of them will be fasting when they're old enough. Have you got any advice how to share with them that fasting isn't just about food?
Of course, yes. The whole practice of fasting, the Prophet states, was institutionalized for those who have, in order for those who have been given by God to be mindful of those who have not been given by God to the level to which they should have been. So, for example, fasting makes us mindful of the hunger of the people of the world who are not, who are less fortunate than we are. And in that way, we become mindful of their plight, their state, and become altruistic and give to them and share with them. I think this is one of the things that we can share with tender young minds, and that maybe brings about an understanding of the practice of fast to them.
Son, thanks. Shaykh, you mentioned about a very individualistic view of spirituality within this month. Is there something as a community that could enhance both our individual aspect of spirituality but as community as well that we can focus on during this month?
Well-organized programs of devotion, collective devotion during the month of Ramadan does have the effect of enhancing collective spirituality, and also an attitude of consideration towards the other allows for the growth of the spiritual person, and these can only come about within a communal context. So minimal sort of communal devotions, but full of quality.
Any further questions?
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna. Thanks for the nice talk, Shaykhna. Just as a reminder, ذكر إن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين. Just going on the path of elevating somebody's self. In the Holy Quran, if we read, sometimes we short snippets from du'as of the Anbiya alayhim salam, from the Holy Prophets. One of the, if we want to get closer to God, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, seeking knowledge, as you said, that is one thing. If we really like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we like to be like Him. So one of the things is opening knowledge. And the ayah that you started with, رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي. That's always we are trying to be open-hearted, open-minded when we, وَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, as well when we speak softly and nicely to the other. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. Always when somebody, just like the Holy Imam said, when somebody come to me with ill deed, I go back to him with in a good way. So it's when we read the stories of the Ahlul Bayt and of the Anbiya throughout the Quran, it's always just a little bit of time, a little bit of thinking. It always goes a long way of growing the person from the inside. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Shaykh, thank you for your talk. Just a quick question. I'm sure I'm not the only one in saying that during the fast, we often feel very tired, and it can affect our performance at work, or if we've got exams, studying, etc. Are there any tips you can give on keeping our energy levels high? I know it's not necessarily related to spirituality, but it's still a factor which I'm thinking ahead of.
To be quite honest with you, spirituality in accordance with the Prophet and the Imam's teachings is a very balanced process in which the body is allowed sufficient rest in order for the soul to grow. You can't abuse the body to the level to which it loses all strength. Now, when people are sitting for exams and they are excessively tired and they can't think straight, well, obviously they are not going to do well in their exams, are they? And if a surgeon has a knife in his hand and then goes to open somebody's chest, yes, to give a bypass, they shouldn't be fasting at that point, should they? Because we are risking somebody's life. Either stop working during the fast, or if you don't feel up to it, you can't endanger somebody's life. I'm talking about an extreme case here. But if we are working on machines, or if we are working for somebody, I don't think there are any tips that you can give how people should rest and what they should eat. And I mean, the Iraqis know exactly what to eat to boost their energy levels. When I used to do iftari here, this was many, many years ago, Dr. Hadi used to bring this soup, and we used to have that soup and dates, and then somebody used to say, Rab. So I said, say Rab. He said, next you will say, call it Allah, Allah. So anyway, we used to drink this soup and dates and this Rab, or whatever else we want to call it, Lord. And the energy levels were just boosted. Yes? So maybe those sort of foods are good. They're nourishing and they keep us, or a good bowl of porridge or something. I don't know. We need to ask dietitians. But I will say this much, that if a person is working for another person and they are not Muslims, we should tell them that, look, my performance may lack during this month. Yes? Because obviously we're habituated to drinking teas and coffees and glasses of water, and all of a sudden, for the first few days when we don't have that supply, we will be noticeably different. Yes? And people giving exams, maybe they need to make a decision as to whether they should be fasting. I mean, especially if they are final exams and giving those exams. Back in the day, when I was 16 and 18, with the 20-hour fasts, we used to play tennis at 6 o'clock. Then would go and give exams, A-levels, then would work in the petrol station, and then would come here to the mosque. We were here at that point, I think. And engage in Quran Khani. I mean, obviously people like, some of us can do it.
I think we've got time for maybe one question, otherwise we can wrap up. Is there any more from the ladies' side? Opportunity? Or in fact any from the gents as well? Shaykh, if we can just finish off then with one question then. In terms of recitation of the Quran or understanding the Quran, it can be easier to just go about reciting it and feel we are achieving, and I'm sure we are achieving. Would you suggest any other methods? So contemplation is one, but for example, challenging to recite X many siparas, or challenging to memorize a certain number of surahs, or challenging to understand the meaning of certain surahs. What sort of challenge could we put to ourselves to actually develop a closeness to the Quran during this month?
What has worked best for me throughout the years has been reading the Quran, and there will be a verse that stops us and beg attention and would want us to think over it, because it would go against whatever we have understood previously. So either in Arabic, a person can recite and be stopped. And it happens in every, part of the Quran. Because if people are habitually reading one part per night, this happens. It happens in multiple places, but at least once it will happen within every juz. And if a person is reciting it in English, then carry on reciting until that one verse grabs their attention. And on that verse, then start thinking, reflecting, contemplating. But not to recite it too slow that the connections are lost. But what happens is with the Quran, it's beautiful. The consistency of the Quran in itself shows it. It's phenomenal. If the Prophet himself were to have authored the Quran, he would not have been able to get the consistency right. One thing, one place, and then 3 chapters later, the same thing is being repeated with the same sequence. And then again 4 chapters later with the same sequence, with subtle variations. So not to recite it too slow, but to recite it at a reasonable speed, and whenever it stops us and grabs our attention, we can think over it, and again it will come back and repeat itself. And that would be a very enlightening, educational experience in itself. I would like to end with one thing, that the ultimate goal of Ramadan is that we are able to give ourselves away to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala altogether. You see, our children are not ours. They are individuals as we are individuals. We are just a means for their coming here. Yes? Our parents are not ours. Allah will take them away. Yes? Our spouses are not ours. We have not had anybody but us, ourselves, and our Allah. The father, the mother, the brother, the sister, the children, the wife, the friend, all of these are arbitrarily connected to us. The real thing inside all of them is that beautiful aspect of Allah that they want to show and bring to us. When Allah removes this, He has already kept that aspect of Him within us through the pain that He has given us, to be able to let it all go. So if such intimate connections are to be detached from, I don't mean don't feel pleasure and pain through relations, do not stagnate through them, that's all. Then by priority, possession of this world, the praise of this world, the popularity of this world, the wealth of this world means very little. Through Ramadan, begin to detach ourselves from all of these things. That would be the greatest achievement in the month of Ramadan.
Son, thank you very much. Can I ask you to recite Surah Fatiha with a loud salawat? Thank you.